Welcome to the Power Lunch. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We're on LinkedIn Live, but we're also broadcasting on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Social Live, and a couple other platforms. But it's a great day to be with you. Now, the point of the show is to bring today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can all learn from, because that's the whole point, is to get better, right, at what we do. And so that's why we do the show. That's why we bring you the guests that we bring you. And today is no exception. I'm going to introduce Melody in just a second. Now, the show is a lot of fun if you ask your questions. So please do post your questions on social media. I know Melody and I will certainly answer them. If we don't get to them in the show, which we sometimes can do, sometimes we can't. But nonetheless, please do ask so that we can interact with you, because that's another one of the reasons why we do it. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from the program as well. And of course, so we can grow a little bit and get a bigger audience if you like us. So anyway, let me introduce our guest today. I've got Melody Godfred. She is the founder of Fred and Far, which empowers women to choose themselves and to practice self-love and self-care. She quit her law practice to begin writing and working in this space. She's the author of the ABCs of Self-Love. Melody, thank you for being on the program.
Thanks for having me, Rhett. It's great to be here.
So you left a successful law practice to publish your first novel. Now, this was a novel. Why did you give up law to write the great American novel?
So, I was a litigation attorney at one of Los Angeles's premier entertainment firms right out of law school. I mean, it was the dream job, and it was the dream until I got there and realized that I had left myself behind, probably long before I'd gotten there. I think a lot of us at the first stage of our lives and careers, we follow a path of achievement, and it's about go, 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 climb the ladder. And I got to the top of the ladder and realized I was not in the right place. And it was soul crushing. It was soul crushing to be good at something and have an amazing sense of security and a great job with great colleagues and not feel connected at all with my true self. So I had to leave.
How long did that take? What was that?
It took a year. And what was really interesting is it manifested itself in a physical way. It was almost like I was allergic to the work I was doing. At night, I couldn't sleep. I had extreme anxiety. And it wasn't because I wasn't thriving. From the outside, anyone who had seen the work I was doing would say I was excelling and I was on a track. But the problem was, when I looked ahead, especially at the women ahead of me on the track, I didn't aspire to be any of them. And so my, ladder started to feel like I was climbing into a prison, and my body was not at all happy with the choices I was making, mainly because law is something that is predicated upon following the rules, following and upholding precedent and engaging in conflict so that you can become a winner. Mm-hmm. And my most authentic self really thrives on creativity and collaboration, which do not fit, especially within a litigation context. And it was a hard lesson to learn, but it was really like the lesson that changed my career and ultimately really changed my life.
What did it feel like the day you left? You remember that feeling?
100%. It took me about 6 months to gather the courage to do it. I knew 6 months in that this wasn't going to be a long-term fit, but for 6 months, I was so devastated by the idea of letting myself down, letting my family down. I'm a first-generation college student. My parents emigrated here when I was 3 months old from Iran after the revolution so that I can have an opportunity to have a better life and be educated. And so to walk away from all of that brought a lot of guilt with it. But once I made peace with the decision and I walked into my mentor's office and I gave him the news, I walked out and it was like an entire weight had been lifted off me. And I stopped having panic attacks at night. Just that very first night, I stopped hallucinating that they were spiders climbing on the walls of my bedroom, which is what I was experiencing on a nightly basis. I was free.
I'm not laughing at you because I understand what you mean. I'm not laughing at you. I get it.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that we think that it's okay to continue with that kind of pain. And I think a lot of people do. And I'm fortunate that I had the means, I had the money saved up, I had the support to be able to make such a drastic career transition. And I take that privilege seriously, because I know for a lot of people, with crushing student loans that oftentimes accompany a law degree, it is not so easy to walk away. But I, was still living at home. I had a very modest lifestyle, and I planned forward. And like you said, I left to write a book, but at the same time, I also started a writing consulting business simultaneously called Write in Color. And I started using the talents that I had developed as an attorney in service of small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so I hit the ground running as a creative and never looked back.
What, did you know sort of while you were going through this process, did you know then that you were practicing self-love? Did that occur to you, or was that something that kind of a revelation that came a little later?
It came later. The path to where I am today in terms of being a self-love philosopher and really focusing on promoting the idea of self-love and self-care came because, by 2015, imagine this was about 7 years after I'd left the law practice, mm-hmm. I had checked off everything on my list. I was in a successful career as an entrepreneur. I was married. I had a dog. I had a house, and I had 2 kids. I had twin girls who were 2 years old at that point. Who wouldn't be happy, right? To have so much, but I wasn't happy. And it was, again, because I had fallen into that rut of not honoring my true self. When I had left to write the novel, I was being creative, I was being expressive, but now I was leading a resume writing business, and every single moment of my day was dedicated to serving other people's needs, whether it was a client or my kids or my home. Mm-hmm. And I was completely missing from the equation, and I needed to do something about it. So for me, a ring, wearing it on a finger I'd never worn a ring on before, my pinky, and using it as a reminder that I belong in my life and I need to take care of myself, and I need to rediscover that spark, that authentic spark that had kept me happy as a kid and had really kept me happy after I left the law and was being creative. And that was how I created the Self-Love Pinky Ring, which is now a ring worn by women in over 40 countries as a symbol and reminder of their commitment to themselves. And so self-love for me was a personal journey that I then transformed into a business that can fuel other women's personal journeys as well.
What is I'm fascinated by this because, what you're talking about really, and we'll talk about the book in a minute, because in the book, you really talk about we're educated, everybody's educated in their whole lives, but we're never taught to love ourselves. And I want to talk about that a little bit, but the question I would have for you then is so it's really about carving out that space for you. How do you do that?
Yes.
Because you're like everybody else. We have our kids, we have our house that we have to take care of, we have the groceries, and we have soccer practice, and we have whatever work we're doing, and we have all these other commitments, right? And our spouse, we carve out time for date night, and our partner or whatever. And so how do you carve out that time for you and not feel guilty about it? I'll give you an example. I was at a yoga retreat this weekend, and I was actually covering, and I was doing a bunch of interviews, and I was at dinner the first night, and 3/4 of the table felt guilty for being there for the weekend. And I thought that was really interesting. They were carving out for themselves, but they felt guilty about it.
I have a very precise answer to that. And this one shift in mental focus, I think, has had the most profound impact on me. And it is gratitude over guilt. And what that means is guilt is a feeling that takes you out of the moment that you're in. Mm-hmm. For example, I'm a working mother. For the longest time, when I was at work, I would feel guilty about not being with my kids. When I was with my kids, I would feel guilty about not doing my work. In both cases, my guilt was taking me out of the present moment. Gratitude, on the other hand, roots you in the present moment. So now when I am doing anything, this interview with you, for example, I have so much gratitude that I'm here with you, that I had this opportunity to connect with you, to connect with your audience. I'm not leaving any space in my mind to feel guilty about the fact that, for example, it's Black Friday in 2 weeks and I haven't done anything in terms of educating my audience about what it is I'm selling, or that a million other things on my to-do list. If I wanted to allow those thoughts of guilt to transport me out of this moment, I could, but I don't, because I practice gratitude. And that's been revolutionary. And I think, to answer your bigger question of how do you carve out space, the first step is to know yourself and know what the space is that you actually need. I think for a lot of us, if somebody were to ask them the question, what do you need to be happy? What do you need to feel cared for? What do you need to operate from a space of like power and fulfillment instead of anxiety and fear? I don't think we know the answer, because we don't create space to ask those questions. So I think there are a lot of different tools you can use to get to know yourself. Journaling is a really good one. It's so simple, but if you start your morning and you reflect and you also incorporate gratitude into that practice of just finding things 2 minutes in the morning to be happy and grateful for, that shifts your energy throughout the day. Another thing I always tell people to do is treat self-care and self-awareness like a business responsibility. Put it in your calendar, whether that means calendaring a therapy appointment, a midday walk, drinking enough water, which, believe me, is the most underrated way to transform your relationship with yourself and your body. 99% of us are dehydrated, and that leads to anxiety, unhappiness, pain, and mental cloudiness. And when you're mentally cloudy, how can you get anything done or even appreciate anything that you have? Yeah. So I treat it like a job. Like, self-care for me is not something that I let happen by accident. It is a habit that I'm cultivating every single day, and I create systems to support that habit. And for me, having a ring that I can stare at every day as a reminder of that commitment has been helpful. For someone else, it could be putting a paperclip that's red on their binder as a reminder that, hey, what are you doing for yourself today to make sure that you are cared for and healthy and happy? I think having that physical reminder has been really key for me and for my community. And I think that if people can make something in their lives that's concrete, it's a lot easier not to forget about yourself.
No, that is so true. How did you get to the place where you could practice gratitude? Like, how did you go about that? Or how can people sort of start? Because to me, it's a habit, right? It's a way you talk to yourself, and it's a way how do you get to that space?
Of the knowing of what you need and what to do.
Well, I understand how you get to where you know what you want, what it is that you need, but how is it? Because the other thing you said that I think was really important is it's your mindset. It's the way you practice gratitude that helps you be fundamentally different too. How did you get to the place where you look at gratitude as opposed to guilt? I guess was the question.
Right. I'll tell you, I grew up in a family where therapy was a dirty word. I mean, it was just, you didn't do that. Like, you didn't ask anybody for that kind of help. And you certainly didn't ever talk about your feelings. You just kind of became passive aggressive. And it wasn't until my early 30s, when I was really struggling and having a hard moment in my marriage, that I thought, okay, this is not going to work for me. I need to do something about this. And I went to 2 different therapists. And the first one heard the facts of my situation and said, you should get a divorce. This is not going to work. And I was completely disheartened. And I went to the second one and she said, you can change the way you think and you can change your life. And I was just blown away. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how I think is how I think. How I think are just a reflection of the facts of my life. What do you mean?
Right.
And let
It
me
is what
tell
it is.
you,
I'm not going to change.
it's not. Everything is subjective. Everything is a choice. How we think is a choice. And this is something that we aren't taught. But once you start recognizing it, you start seeing the world through a different lens. I could be at a restaurant and I can order a meal and the meal can come and something could be wrong. And I can think, this always happens to me. Everything is always wrong. I never get what I want. It always gets messed up. Or I can think, no big deal. I'm going to ask them to change it.
They'll fix it.
And these same situation, two completely different thought patterns. And with those two different thought patterns, two completely different emotional experiences. And that's what I do every day. I've become aware of the thoughts that flow into my brain and I make a decision. Is this the thought I want? Is this the wave I want to ride? Or am I just going to wait? My husband is a surfer and he has taught me this. When he goes out into the water, you don't just ride any wave that comes. You watch the waves. You wait for it. You wait for the good wave. And then you ride that all the way into the shore. And that's what I do with my thoughts. If I can't push for the good wave, sometimes I just have to wait and let my brain calm down until a better wave comes along. And that's the one I choose to ride. And I think for all of us, there are certain waves that are a better choice. Gratitude is always a good choice. If you don't know where else to go, if you're in a moment of intense fear or anxiety or just completely being disheartened about something, just pause and challenge yourself to say 5 things you're grateful for. I do this with my kids on the way to school because the mornings are a hard time. Everything's rushed. It's like way too early. School should start an hour later than it does. Yeah. And to calm us all down, I say, what are 5 things you're grateful for? And any answer counts. And this is, I think, a piece of gratitude that people don't recognize. They think they need to be creative. They think that saying grateful for your health or shelter or friends or family and being redundant doesn't count. It does count. It literally rewires your brain because your brain can only handle one thing at a time. If you're feeling grateful, you cannot feel anxious in the same moment. And so I think it's about incorporating these simple, easy, actionable aspects of self-love into your daily life. And that's why I wrote the book, because I think you hear the word self-love and you're like, yeah, that's nice. What the heck does that mean? Yeah. And for me, I want to offer 26 extremely concrete ways that you can turn what is this elusive phrase into a daily way of life.
What does self-love look like for you? I mean, you've talked a little bit about it. Gratitude. Is it, because I know you in the book, you talk about being vulnerable, being kind of honest and being, genuine and all that stuff. What does it look like for you?
I think for me personally, forgiveness is the biggest thing I'm working on right now. And it's mainly forgiveness towards myself. I'm someone who is constantly looking for a way to do better, to give more, to make a bigger impact, to be a better wife, to be a better daughter, to be a better person in the world. And when things don't work, I am very quick to blame myself and to replay the story of my failure in one way or the other. And that's, for me, self-love right now is identifying that pattern and breaking it down and instead transforming it into, I am so proud of what I've accomplished. I'm so proud to be on this with you, telling my story and talking about my businesses and my passions, instead of thinking about, so many different opportunities I had that maybe I could have handled differently. When I started Fred and Far, it went instantly viral. Within 6 months, we were in hundreds of publications organically around the world and did like $500,000 of sales in 6 months for a business that just didn't even exist 6 months earlier. And then the following year, it slowed down. And who did I blame for that? myself. And I'm shifting the lens and recognizing that I'm still here. A lot of businesses, they grow, they burn out, they disappear, they take venture capital, they blow through it. I've been bootstrapped since day one. I've been profitable since year one. And more than that, because money is such a small piece of my entrepreneurial journey, I know without a doubt that on a daily basis, I'm making it easier for women to claim their stories, to be their true selves, and to live a life that fuels them instead of depleting them. And what more could you want than to know that you've made a concrete impact on someone's life, and also on the lives of everyone else around them, because a self-loving woman makes life better for everyone. That I know for sure.
Indeed. Yeah, that's truth right there. What's the mission going forward for Fred and Far and for the ABCs of self-love? Is there a next? You're just going to keep plugging along and spreading this gospel, this word, and trying to really move the needle in people's happiness and self-love.
You know, when I started this business, my mission was to make the self-love pinky ring as instantly recognizable as the engagement ring. And the reason I wanted to do that is because right now, when you see a woman with an engagement ring, you instantly know something about her. You know that she's been chosen by someone. You know that she is loved by someone. You know that she belongs to someone. Imagine if we lived in a world where every single person, man or woman, adult or child, felt that they were chosen and loved and worthy just by being themselves, not because they've achieved a certain label or because someone else has come along and decided that they are a worthy person. So ultimately, that is my fundamental goal, is to allow every single person on this planet to embrace what makes them unique, because that is how we can make a unique contribution to the world. And that's how we no longer feel like we're broken pieces going out into the world trying to find wholeness. How am I going to do that in 2020 and beyond? I think taking the experience offline, doing more in-person events, getting to connect with people in different cities in a more intimate way, and creating those communities for people is going to be incredibly important, because while having a social community has been transformative for me, and I know and I see the bonds that are forming between women, I think that in our daily lives, we're a little bit disconnected. We're more likely to be looking at our iPhones than looking at another person in the eye. And I'd really like to use this platform as a way to change that and to rekindle some of the personal relationships that I think are so important for our humanity. And so, yeah, that's going to be my mission, is to make more opportunities for people to connect in person, and also to continue sharing on a deep level the stories of all the women in our community, because hearing those stories could be the thing that saves another person and allows them to embrace their story as well.
Yeah, that's I think that's so true. No, absolutely. Why do you think self-love is so hard?
That's such a good question. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the word self is kind of a dirty word, right? We're taught growing up, like, don't be a narcissist, don't focus on yourself, like, don't be too self-confident, like it's perceived as cocky, especially for women. I think there is like a lot of derogatory identity that's wrapped up in the idea of being self-aware. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is it's easier to not work on yourself. I mean, part of self-love is not just embracing the shiny bits of who you are, but also recognizing the parts of yourself that are a little bit harder and being comfortable with those. And doing that self-work, it's work. It's not easy. I mean, someone sent me a meme yesterday that said, okay, girls, we're done doing self-care. We're going back to doing drugs. Like, it was a silly meme, but it made me chuckle, because I realized that for a lot of people, it's a lot easier to numb your pain, to distract yourself, to engage in bad habits, to do anything possible to avoid being with yourself. And I think self-love kind of forces you to take that wall down and get comfortable with who you are and be comfortable, going out into the world as that person instead of putting up a mask and trying to conform. Because one thing I've realized is that self-love is about authenticity, which is the opposite of perfection. And I think for much of our lives, we go out into the world trying to become perfect, which is this ideal that is outside of ourselves, and it takes us far away from ourselves. And self-love brings you back in. And it's a ride. It's not easy, but I would say that it is absolutely worth it.
How did you wrote an article? I think it was either Huffington Post or Motherly, and you talked about how that saved your marriage and saved yourself practicing self-love. How is that?
So the most interesting thing for me is that when I was married at the beginning and I had my daughters, I thought that I needed to control everything. And that meant I can do it better. I can do it on my own. I can't count on anyone. And it was taking that moment of recognizing like, oh my God, I actually do need help. Like that self-awareness and accepting that other people can be part of my story and it's not all on my shoulders, that allowed me and my husband to have a more authentic bond and to actually be a partnership instead of me trying to be a martyr who self-sacrificed herself into a perfect family situation. And I think I'm fortunate in that having twins really pushes you to the brink that first year, and it doesn't let you get away with anything. And me trying to be a martyr was a habit. It was something I watched my mom do, my grandmother do. It's like ingrained. But it wasn't a real partnership, and it wasn't an effective parenting technique. And so for me, in taking the space to reflect upon my needs and to get to know myself and to create a lifestyle that wasn't just about other people, I was actually able to invite those other people in as opposed to feeling like I was simply responsible for them. And in inviting them in, we were able to connect on a deeper level and have a more meaningful relationship in my marriage and also in my friendships as well.
No, I was going to ask you if it translated into friendships and relationships with parents, and anything else. Yeah.
It has touched every relationship in my life. And I think for a long time, I was the advice giver. Like I was the friend you went to if you wanted someone to tell you what to do. And that was a crutch I used to avoid self-reflection and self-worth. And, the word self-love is all encompassing, but I think for me, it really is about going inside and doing the work. And for a long time, I didn't do that. And at the end of the day, once you become an adult, you don't need anyone to give you advice. I think that's one of the things I've learned and really used to transform my relationships. It's not about anyone coming to me to figure out what they need to do. It's about me holding space and saying, I'm here. I'm going to stand with you. You're going to figure it out yourself. And then we're going to continue to walk through life together and celebrate and support each other through whatever may come.
Yeah, I understand that. And that makes a lot of sense. So best advice that you ever got and who gave it to you?
Best advice was from my dad. And he's an entrepreneur going on now for probably 50 years.
Wow.
And the best advice he ever gave me was just start. I resisted this advice for a long time. And I had so many business ideas that I would spend 6 months working on the business plan and the logo and the name and the this and the that. And all I ended up doing during that process was convincing myself why I shouldn't do it. And he always told me that, all you need to do is make a decision. And from there, you'll make another one and you'll make another one. And before you know it, you will have a business that's thriving. Whereas if you just get into analysis paralysis, you're never going to get anywhere. And he's absolutely right. Anytime I've just done something, it has always led to something greater. When I had, started Fred and Far, I didn't make a big deal of it. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to bring this ring to market. And boy, did I make a lot of mistakes on the way, but here I am. And I'm so proud of where I am. And if I hadn't taken his advice to just do it, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And I wouldn't have published my second book that I'm so passionate about. Like, everything has led to this moment. And so I think for anyone who wants to start a business and is struggling with where to start, I'm going to give that same advice from him. Just start. Minimum viable product. Get it out there. And then just keep iterating and growing and being flexible. Because I think flexibility is the hallmark of a good leader, whether it's in, the work you do on yourself on a personal level, or how you manage your team, or how you grow your business. As long as you're flexible and you focus on where you are and what's in your power, then, you're going to reach an outcome that you can't even fathom, because that's certainly what happened to me. I never, ever could have imagined that, this little idea I had would be something that was impacting thousands of people around the world every single day.
Yeah, that's I love what he had to say, because that's
Yeah.
so true. How did they just sort of an end note, but how did they react when you quit law? Were they supportive?
Yes. It took a while. Like I said, I didn't decide overnight to leave. And I think at first my dad was just like, "You're crazy. Like, this is such a cush job. It's so reputable. It's like, it was a dream job."
Right.
And my mom was the one who actually had kind of pushed me to go to law school in the first place. So she really didn't understand. She's like, "You're made for this. You've got everything it takes to do this." But yeah, they've been so profoundly supportive of everything I've wanted to do. And I think that we all need to cultivate a community that can support us as we go through life. And that's, something that's discounted, right? And for everyone, it may not be your family, it may not be your sister, your brother, your parents, but everyone has access to other human beings. And I think the more we can create communities of support, the more we can all elevate each other up, because otherwise we live kind of in an isolating time. So human connection, I think, is key.
No, that's why I like your idea of going out and actually building these communities, because, you need, I think we're all searching for that community, right? We're all searching for those people that we connect with, that we have something in common with, that we, so that we know that we're not alone, and that we know that we can call somebody in our community and go have coffee or tea with them if we need to sit down and talk about something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that helping build those communities out in the world, I think I love that idea in terms of your next sort of growth, for your business. So I think that's a great, yeah.
Well, stay tuned. I'm working on something around Valentine's Day, so that'll be the first foray into an in-person experience.
I look forward to hearing about it. And thank you for spending some time with us today on the Power Lunch on LinkedIn Live. We've got a great lineup coming up. We've got Liz Gilbert from Eat, Pray, Love. We've got Billy Zane next week. We'll be live from Global Venture Summit in Luxembourg. And then we're going to be back in the studio for a couple weeks in December. Thankfully, we've been on the road for over a month now. But if you want to look at the schedule, please go to powerlunch.live and, just check out the schedule. We've got a great schedule coming up, even into December. If you want us to come and do live from your show or from your conference, please reach out and we can see if we can make that happen. But until tomorrow, we'll be back online, and have a good Thursday, and have a good day. Thanks, Melody.
Thank you.
Oh, we got it. Hello. Where can they get the ABCs of self?
Yes, thank you. All important plug. I would love for you to pick up my book, The ABCs of Self-Love. It's available on Amazon as a print book and also as a Kindle edition. And you can also pick it up on my website, which is fredandfar.com. Either way, I hope you'll keep in touch with me as you go through it. It's a workbook, so you're going to have to do some work, but I know at the end of it, you will be closer to your true self than you ever have been. So I can't wait to hear about it.
Okay, you heard. Go get it. You need it. ABCs of Self-Love. And we'll put a link. Can we put a link on the post so that people can we'll do that so that people can go to it directly. we'll make it easy for everybody. And thank you so much, Melody.
Thanks, Rhett.